Welcome to the Operation Move podcast. My name is Zoe, and this week we're starting a regular thing, which is training talk with Kirsten, mostly based on the theory that if we did semi-regular podcasts, then they might be less than 3 hours. So that's what we're going with. So the first part is us talking about that, and then we dive into some community questions from Run Club. So the question from Rachel was around like what to do in the week before your event, and her specific event was the half marathon. So we were sort of talking to that, but also speaking in general about that. And we'll just with these episodes do the training talk part and then do some community questions part. So if you have any questions at all, just let us know, and then we can include them. And probably also, didn't actually get in there that like the other thing that you want to not do the week before a race is get sick, which is what I did, which you probably hear in my voice. But everything else is good advice. So I hope that you enjoy it, and thanks for listening. So what did I do this week? Not a lot. So I had like this kind of like, who even knows if it was a cold or if it was just like taper craziness, I don't know. But on Saturday, I guess it was, I started to feel a little bit less than fresh. And I was like, oh, that's, and it's sort of at that time where you've got sort of, I guess it would have been, where are we now? We're sort of like a week away. So sort of like a couple of weeks away from the Gold Coast. So there's still, like, if I'm going to get sick, there's still time to be sick.
It's a good time to be sick.
Time to be sick, time to get better. But
Perfect.
If I'd kind of pushed through and then not gotten sick for another week, then there's no time. So I was like, I don't think I should go. And particularly because the next run was 25Ks, and I was really looking forward to it because it's sort of one of those, it was sort of like not like one of those sort of like aggressively paced ones. So it's just sort of like go out and do a nice long run on the weekend, be nice. But I was like, that's really going to kind of like lower the immune system, and it could, like, at the moment it feels like it's in my head, but it could make it down into the chest. And so I was like, I don't think I should go. And just to be sure, I messaged my coach and I said, like, skip or not. And because of the time difference, he didn't actually get back to me until that night. And he's like, skip. And I'm like, good, because that's what's happened. And then I didn't run on, I guess it was like Monday or Tuesday either. Yeah. And then by Wednesday, I started to have that feeling like, I was like, I'm not 100%, but I kind of like need to go out for a run just to kind of like clear it off and go, okay, like we're not just like going into winter hibernation now. Like you need to do some stuff.
Well, you've got to give it a test out and see, are you really sick, or are you just...
Yeah,
you're partly sick.
Little bit.
Kind of paper sick.
Yeah. So I went and did that, and I'm a bit snotty, but it was okay. And then, so it was just sort of like that day was moderate, and then the next day was easy. And then today I had like my first workout, which after last week where I had that progression run that went horribly awry, I was a little bit nervous about it. And also because I don't, generally speaking, there's not like my sort of like paces are achievable enough that there would never really be a workout where I miss them.
Yep.
Like they're not. So even some workouts might feel harder than others, but generally I can like land within that zone. So having something where I was kind of aiming for in between kind of like, I guess like 4:30 to 4:45 pace, and me struggling at like 4:55 is not something that happens regularly, or like probably the only time that's happened is like one interval, like when it was like 35 degrees and I was like very close to going,
really good reason not to be able to make that pace.
Could just quit right now and like go get an ice cream. And so then it's sort of like it starts to get in your head a bit like maybe I've detrained, like maybe I wasn't like properly recovered from Canberra, you know, like maybe I ate too much chocolate. I don't know, like what is going on? And so I thought, well, this is going to be good because it is going to test out that race pace zone. And if it's okay, then I know that like I can proceed. And if it's not okay, then like that's just an adjustment that we'll make and we'll go, okay, you know, like we can just dial back the race. So I had, this is one of the things that my coach does, which I like, is he disguises workouts so they don't look the same. So like last cycle, one of the last things I did was 10 kilometers at race pace. And then today was like 1.6 at sort of like 5 to 10K, and then like a 400 meter jog, and then 6.5 at race pace, and then 400 meter jog, and then the 1.6 again, which effectively is 10 kilometers at race pace. But it doesn't look like that. It looks different, so it doesn't freak me out too much. And it was hard but good, you know, like and particularly given like I just got my period and my stomach was a bit like, oh, this seems a bit hard. But yeah, so that was good, and I've got a rest day tomorrow, which is nice. Awesome. So it was sort of just good to mentally know, okay, like that sort of that pace is there. And then because a couple of days ago it was like maybe I should just, you know, I was ready to kind of like go, I could give my entry away to someone. I don't need to do that race. That's a bit hard. I've been sick. I could just like not, I could just go and I could be at the finish line and I could take pictures of people and I could eat stuff. So
potato chips,
you know,
what's not to love?
Who signed up for this race anyway?
You've got it. It doesn't matter how long or short your race time is. It doesn't matter if you're trying to do your 21K in an hour and hour and a half, or if you're aiming just to make cut off. Everyone has those pre-race.
Yes.
Everyone doubts themselves. Everybody's ready to set their entry on fire or give it away for free, you know, and questions their purpose, don't they? It's not something that's reserved just for those at the back or those at the front. I think it's a global. It's just it's blanket. It applies to everybody.
And I think you probably would never really want to like get to the point where you didn't have those sort of like nerves going into something. Like it's always, I don't think I've ever had a race where that's never not happened. It always happens.
Yeah, so. And it's sort of if you're doing it without some level of excitement, or and it's a good sort of anxiety. Like it's not damaging, I don't think, unless it takes hold of you in a bad way. But it's it shows that it means something to you and you're invested in the outcome, and it's not just otherwise you can just go and run 21K down the street, you know, and plant water bottles along the way or something. If you haven't got a little bit of excitement about going in there and can I do it and should I do it and all this sort of stuff, then maybe save your $120 entry fee and go buy yourself a new pair of runners instead.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely, you know, like I've entered into jetty to jetty, which will be like a couple of weeks later, and I will not be racing that guaranteed. So that's a bit different in that, like, I wouldn't get nervous before running.
There's an excitement about it.
Running that, but like because the amount of running I do on my own is a lot. So anytime I get to run with other people, that's always
Absolutely.
exciting. And then you always get to see like how other people do in their events and everything like that. And so like I think there's always, always those sort of like nerves. And even sometimes I think before with sort of like with the way training's going, I'll be getting to a race for like what is planned to be like at a sort of like at an easy pace, and I'm like, gee, 21 kilometres is a long way, isn't it?
Yes, it takes a while. Yep.
So what have you been up to this week?
I've just taken it easy because we've been twinning, and I got crook on the weekend. I had a big weekend of running and working and socialising with family, so I ended up catching a bit of a head cold off my siblings and my sister and my dad in particular. Not sure who's to blame, but I'm happy to just throw that around because they were pretty generous.
Yes.
From their direction. So I've come down with a bit of a sore throat and a nasty headache, but and so I with the Mondays and Tuesdays are a little bit tricky with Heidi being home, so I sometimes can get in a run and sometimes I can't, but I was supposed to have my personal training session on Monday morning, and that just turned into a bit of a stretch and move kind of a thing. Didn't do anything else Monday and Tuesday except for some yoga, and then what are we at Friday? So Wednesday I went out for a run and it felt a little bit better. And yesterday I did a little bit longer. I did just over an hour. Did a 9K loop, which had lots of lovely hills, lots of ups and downs in it. So and it felt really good just to stretch out. I've been a little bit wary of running longer. I think I'm a bit scared to run longer. I don't know at the moment. But at the same time, I'm starting to have these daydreams in my head about just heading out for a 2-hour long run and just zoning out and sort of. And so I feel like my brain's telling me it's ready to start trying. I've just got to get the body on board now. So,
how many weeks into recovery are you now?
I think this is 6 weeks. So I'm actually really surprised as to how good my running's been feeling these last 2 weeks. I think it was all feeling really hard and really, really shit, and it's no surprise.
No.
But it's always hard to accept. But the minute you accept it, it's almost like it does a 180 turn and things start to change. So it was, the minute I sort of just said, look, I'm still in recovery. It is, it's okay. I'm going to give myself a bit of grace and a bit of room to just, I'm going to focus on just moving my body however it feels like it needs to be moved, whether that's doing some yoga or just going for a walk. And then, just like that, snap, turns around and everything starts to feel good. So go figure. It's but I did a very a really lovely little trail run that's popped up in Canberra in the last few years, just outside of Canberra in Wombourne, and the Cowan Trail Run, which is organised by a local ultra runner, Pam Munston, who has done the Coast to Cozzy ultra run a few times, and she's a bit of a local legend around here, and she organises it, and they do a lovely little run that raises money for a local rural fire brigade. So I did that, and there was a 12.5k run, and I was surprised. I was expecting it to feel terrible, and it didn't, and I was really, really pleased with that. And I was we stopped I was running it with my friend Emily, and we stopped for a shoe emergency, and then we stopped to help a lady who had fallen over just in front of us and had cut her hand open and bleeding everywhere. So even with 2 pauses and what felt like a lot of walking, well, we only finished, I think, 7 minutes slower than the same event last year. And I remember it felt really hard last year, and that was 4 weeks after running the 50 at UTA, and this was 4 weeks after running the 100 at UTA. And I feel like a 7 minute time difference between in the exact same event, 12 months apart. It just goes to show that it shows me that my fitness has improved, my running fitness has improved, and my recovery has improved. So yeah, it was really nice, and I feel like since then I've been able to run a little bit further and run a little bit easier, and rather than just sort of not dragging myself through my runs, but certainly not bouncing my way through them either.
And it's nice when you have those little things like that post race, because that sort of recovery period, particularly for like the longer ones, can really stretch out, and you're like, oh, I'm never going to be able to run again. This is
and it
like,
makes you question the distance. It makes you question, because you think, I love the training block, I love the training cycle, I love the process, I love the event, and then there's the recovery. And the recovery, if you don't embrace it, it can be really frustrating, and it can, while you're stuck in it, it can seem really long. So, and you feel like you've lost fitness and you've lost condition, and you're exhausted all the time and everything. So it can be really demotivating, I guess, or deflating, but then you sort of come through the other side. But yeah, it can be. And I was kind of expecting that, that I would still be feeling pretty rubbish about now. But I'm actually quite surprised and looking forward to getting back into a training cycle, I guess.
Yeah.
I've had a rest. I'm set, I'm done. So I've got 2 more runs hopefully this week. I've been to the gym a few times, and so no, it's been a good week and beautiful day today. Just a stunning day to be outside and running in winter.
We had last week was just such beautiful weather. Like, it was cold and sunny. And I'm like, I love winter. Winter is awesome.
Winter is my favourite.
Winter's my favourite. And then we had this week where it was just like non-stop torrential rain. And I'm like, oh, I remember this. This is no good. And I got lucky a few times in that I was able to sort of, like, I don't mind rain, but it's hard to get yourself out there when it's already pouring down. Like, if that happens while I'm already out there, it doesn't really bother me too much. But I definitely got lucky with the runs this week, and also just probably with them being like, as I head into the taper, like they're not quite as long, so and just sort of, but yeah, today is very nice. So like hopefully the weekend will be too, and it's not just like a one-off, because it's been a bit like that. It'd be like, oh, sun's out, oh, now it's pissing down rain again. Good. So Rachel's question was, she's got she's going to be doing the half marathon up Gold Coast, and the first part of her question was do's and don'ts in the lead up to an event. This is a fun one.
It is a fun one. There's so many. Have you got you need your lucky socks. There's so many people who've got, I'm sure people have got their tried and true.
I really feel like my husband, Josh, is like a walking embodiment of what not to do.
He tries everything new, doesn't he?
Yeah. Like, maybe it wasn't last time, like I tried to convince him that he was going to need some kind of fueling. And I said to him, now have like one of the gels or one of the chews before the race so you know what it tastes like, so it's not like a shock to the system. He did not do that. And then he had one during the race and he nearly vomited. and then last year, and he's going to do the same thing this year, he bought a new pair of shoes on the Saturday that he ran in on the Sunday.
Yep.
Also less than ideal.
Did you buy something new the year before as well? I'm sure, because I wasn't there last year, but the year before I was, and I'm sure he had a new shoes or new shirt.
New shirt, something. Yeah, it's just, and so...
Good luck charm, though. Have something new, something blue, something borrowed, something...
Yeah, so don't do that.
No.
But let's see, what are the things that I would say not to do? Because I think in some ways, like, the not to do's are easier than the to do's. But like probably the biggest mistakes I've made has been like an oily dinner the night before. I had a very delicious pizza one year before Great Ocean Road, and that was a bad choice.
Yeah.
So generally speaking, I aim for sort of like high carb but low fat.
Yep.
On
you can go for your carbonara if you were going to go for your pasta meal. And quite honestly, you don't have to go. Like, pasta's not necessarily the best.
I usually don't have pasta anymore. Like, I'd probably be more like, we've gone out like for dinner sometimes and had, you know, like Asian or dumplings or something like that, and just sort of gone, you know, like veggies and rice
in your tummy. I find it's. I mean, obviously it's personal preference.
Yeah.
Something that's higher carb, but not too fatty, not too creamy.
Yeah, I mean, basically, you want to sort of like get as much carbs as possible. So, you know, things that are sort of take more work for your digestive system, like protein and fat, are not great ideas. Like, you don't want to have like none of those things, but you just want to limit it. So I would still have coffee, but I wouldn't have like ice cream or cheese or cream. It's very boring. Like, people think that, you know, like carb loading is so fun, and you're like, but it's kind of boring.
Yeah.
I much prefer the eating afterwards.
Yeah. And I think, you know, the longer you go, probably the longer distances, the more potential you've got for things like gastric upset as well. So you don't want to eat anything you wouldn't normally eat in the few days leading up to it as well. You don't drastically change your diet because your race is 3 days away either. Because
I mean, you want to kind of like I sort of tend to have like a set pattern for things, but it's also something that I've tested over many races, so I know that it works well for me. And like, I've done, you know, like I've sort of like done what I normally do, and then for some races also gone, you know, how important could carb loading possibly be, and not done it. And kind of important. So like it is something that hopefully you will have tested a little bit with your long run by sort of having a bit of like a carb load type dinner the night before of your long run. If you haven't at this stage, then I wouldn't change anything drastically, because, you know, like, if you are going to be taking on fuel during the race, then you don't have to be super, super concerned about the carb loading before that. It's more about, you know, like, you want all of your glycogen to be topped up, yes, but that's pretty easy to do with just having some potatoes or rice or pasta or whatever the night before. It's not a big deal. I would also tend to sort of, because I'm probably underhydrated most of the time, which is not good. I've started like tracking my water every day just to sort of remind myself, particularly this time of year because you're not as hot.
Winter.
And but so generally sort of 3 days out, I would start like making sure that enough water is happening, and I would probably put a little bit of juice in that water just so that there's some electrolytes in there.
Those hydrolyte tablets that you get from the supermarket for when your kids have got gastro or whatever. They're fantastic just to have a couple of those.
Yeah.
But you can tip over from being, well, you know, properly hydrated to overhydrated very easily. And the second is worse. You don't want to dilute all your electrolytes in your blood. So because that can lead to more problems. So I would, you know, for me, I would in the few days leading up to it, make sure that I'm drinking to my thirst levels, and I usually drink about 2 litres of water a day anyway. But I would just top up with a hydrolyte tablet in my drink once a day, just to make sure that that my electrolytes are sort of optimised. I guess.
No deep tissue massages once you get like sort of
2
like 5
out.
days out.
Yeah, I wouldn't even know that, go longer.
Like I tend to go about 10 days before. I'll go to the osteo and get like a bit of tune up, get her to pull all of my bones into the right position.
Bit of a loosen up.
And she'll do some sort of stuff on, like she did like stuff on my hamstrings and my calves as well. But it then also, because oftentimes if you're used to your body feeling particularly tight, you won't feel it. So she's doing some stuff and I'm going, like I got all of this quad work to do because it's tight, and that's why everything is sort of like not being super comfortable. And like I hopped on the roller last night and I was like, I wasn't super painful, but it was like the sensation of like how tight my quad was kind of giving me heartburn and a bit of nausea. And I'm like, okay, so I've got a bit of work to do here. But even with that, even with foam rolling, as you get closer, I would do light foam rolling, but nothing super deep. Because it can take a little while for your muscles to recover from that. And it's in some ways, it's better for them to be tight than to be over relaxed, like going into an event. So I wouldn't do anything of that. So you can just sort of like plan your body treatments in advance, and then I will tend to sort of like book in for afterwards, like not the week after, like let everything settle down
week after.
a little bit. But so that can be a good thing to do. And you know, like if you are like, I guess the other thing is in terms of like planning the actual event, if you are somebody who has a specific time goal, then it's good to have a plan going in. And so generally speaking, you would have a plan for not just like, okay, this is the pace that I'm going to run this section, or these are the walk run intervals I'm going to do. Like having a structure stops you from kind of like letting yourself off the hook when things get a little bit hard. And so I think that can be helpful, particularly if you're doing walk run, because having like, okay, this is how long I run for and this is how long I walk for, stops it from turning into more walking than maybe what you want. And then you can also kind of like look at where the water stations are. And so if you are kind of going, okay, I need to get 3 or 4 gels in, then these are the times that would be good to get those gels in, because I can have water afterwards. or, you know, like planning to, you know, sort of also like have them as like, okay, these are where the water stations are, so I'm going to walk through all of those places and they're going to be my walk breaks. You know, just all of that sort of stuff can help also for you to just know when the water stations are coming up, so you know that you're either going to have to kind of like get into the stream of things to get to the water station or get out of people's way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's and I think having it doesn't matter whether you're racing it to try and get a PB, or are you aiming to finish, or you just want to enjoy it or have a consistent pace throughout the whole run. You still have to have I think having a plan is key to getting the most out of it.
I mean, it's the same with workouts. Like I had, when I was doing my half pace thing today, I'd sort of like I was aiming for around like 4:30 pace, and I was sort of sitting on 4:31 and I was happy with that, and at a certain point it dropped to 4:32. There's that voice in my head that goes, 4:32 is fine. You know, like you don't have to go faster than this.
Yeah.
And then you're like, but the whole point of this is kind of like to be able to kind of like, when I get to the race, I want to be able to kind of like push past that, like that bit of discomfort. So like, that's not good enough. You're going to have to speed up now. And having those sort of structures in place can stop that kind of that voice in your head
absolutely. When your brain wants to protect you, doesn't it? And it will tell you anything,
and it sounds so reasonable. It's so reasonable.
Everything sounds reasonable except going faster when you try it. You know, you can justify anything that you need to. So having a plan in place and having that having that structure means that you can tell your brain that, no, this is, I can appreciate what you're saying. I understand that you're tired. I know my legs are tired, but this is my plan and I'm going to stick to it for as long as I can. Yeah.
And it's also one of the things that I've sort of tended to do too is just because I have that thought doesn't mean I have to act on it straight away. I can go, okay, that I'm feeling that, and then I'll kind of like try to be as objective as possible and go, okay, like, how's my breathing? My breathing is actually fine. You know, like it's that's all good. You know, check in with the legs, like, like I can feel that I'm working, but they're fine too. Let's just hang here and see what happens. Particularly if you, like most people, I think, will have like a point in their long run or in their race where they have like a struggle period. And for me, that tends to be the middle, because it's sort of like that meaty part where you're starting to kind of like feel some of the fatigue, but you've still got a long way to go. And by the time I get to sort of like probably 7Ks to the finish, then like I can almost taste it at that point. And it's just like, just keep running, and very, very soon there will be coffee, and like you can see it from there.
Start driving yourself from that point on, don't you, really?
Yeah. So, you know, like having an awareness of where that struggle part might be can help you to sort of distance yourself from it, like, and go, okay, this is the hard part. It's supposed to be hard. I know it's going to be hard. I've just got to get through this next bit.
Not internalising it, not taking it personally, not allowing it to be a reflection of you is really important, because you can really start to hate on yourself in that moment. You really, I'm so slow. I should have done this. I should have done that. I wish I'd done this. What am I even bothering? Like, you can go into a really dark place very, very quickly in those hard parts of the race. And so to keep it, to keep moving and to keep those thoughts subjective, and to do the head to toe sort of body check. How am I feeling? And that hurts. Well, you know what? I've already run 12K, so of course, they're going to be a bit tired. Or no, it's okay. So I'm going to just keep going with these intervals. I'm going to run this bit. I'm going to walk this bit. If I have to slow my run pace down for the run interval, that's totally fine. And because 9 times out of 10, that feeling will pass.
Yeah. And I mean, it is good to have, like, oftentimes you'll have your sort of like your A goal and your B goal and your C goal. And it is good to have those there so that if for whatever reason that A goal becomes unachievable, that you've still got something else to go for, because it can be quite demotivating otherwise. But also don't allow yourself to downshift in goals too soon. Just it's okay to kind of feel uncomfortable and trust that that a lot of the time it's temporary, and sometimes it'll pop up at weird points in time. Like, I've traditionally never had any issue in sort of like the first third, and I remember one year at the Gold Coast, it was like I just could not get comfortable. I think I was just like panicking a little bit, and it made me feel even more panicked because it was in the beginning bit where I should feel good. And I was just like,
if it feels like this now, what's it going to feel like in 45 minutes time?
And I was just like, that's okay, we're just going to hang here and we'll just see what happens, won't make any decisions yet. And then by the time I got to sort of like 6 kilometres, I came good, and I never hit that struggle period in the middle. It had just come early for whatever reason. So, I think that not making quick decisions, particularly in long races, like in something like a 5K, or if you're doing a hot mile, you probably do have to make fast decisions.
Absolutely, you do. Yeah, there's a
but
time and a
half
place.
marathon, you got time on your side, so you can sort of just sort of allow yourself to sit there for a bit.
Yeah, and it just it's and you can look around and talk to the person who's near you, or strike up a conversation or something to distract yourself. Sometimes that's all you need, and if you're struggling, guarantee you can just about put money on the fact that somebody nearby you is going to be struggling too.
Yeah.
And you never know who's going to have a good day and a bad day, and just saying hello to people and saying, oh, how are you going? And, oh, it's a beautiful day, or, is this your first half marathon or whatever? You can strike up a conversation, and you just never know. You might find that person that you're going to cross the finish line with, holding hands and celebrating the fact that you've done it. You just don't know. But it's if you find you're really struggling to get out of your own way, talk to somebody.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's good in the week leading up to it too, is to kind of, because it can be easy to get sucked into kind of like being intimidated by the event, or scared of it, or afraid of what might happen, but to just kind of visualize how you want to feel when you cross the line, and not have that connected to, even if you were going in with a time goal, I like to visualize that independent of the time goal. I just want to think about how I want to feel at that point, because if I get to the end and I feel like I could not have dug any more deeper into the well, then that makes me really happy. So, like in Canberra, where towards the end I was struggling to hold on to the pace, and like my breathing was starting to get like quite challenging, and I kind of like felt like I was, like at one point I attempted to have some water and felt like I was choking a little bit because of like the breathing was starting to get quite laboured. And that to me, with 2 kilometres to go or whatever, is actually a really good feeling, because I'm there and I'm going, okay, this is maximum effort. We've reached maximum effort and we're pretty close to the finish. So that's sort of like a win-win scenario. And it has... it doesn't have to be connected to pace, and that way you can get to the finish line, you can have that feeling, and it doesn't matter what that has looked like on the day in terms of what you did. You're never going to be disappointed with that, because you know that you put yourself in a good position to have maximum effort, and that's what happened.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some of the do's leading up to the event?
Lots
Rest.
of rest.
lots of rest.
Do not be... People are often tempted to do, myself very much included, often tempted to do something quite stupid in the lead up because you get anxious about the pace. And
don't cram.
And you kind of like, there is part of you that sort of like wants to test it out in some way, but it is not beneficial. So the amount of people who just go, oh, I just went to, you know, like park run on the day before or the week before and I just run a 5K PB. It's like, that's awesome, but don't do that.
Do that. You got to just keep it, recognize it for the fact that it feels good.
Yeah.
And pull back.
Yeah. You just
say, this is awesome. This is how it's going to feel next, blah, blah, at the event. I'm just going to take it down a gear. And I know that it's there ready and waiting for me.
Yeah. And it's sort of similar with all of that extra energy you have from reduced training and extra nervous energy that you have. As much as possible, you just want to hold on to that and not let it seep out into the ether. Just hold on to that because you can use that. So what are other do's?
Some other do's, I think, I think it's important to pay attention to the niggles that pop up in the week beforehand, but don't focus on them. Yeah. Don't make them into something that is, I've just turned a do into a don't, haven't I? Be aware that things are there, but don't make them into something that's huge.
Yeah, I mean, they can definitely help you out. Like today when I was running, I was sort of like aware of things that might be tight and I go, okay, like I can focus on that. Like I want to do some more foot contact drills. I want to get that happening. I want to like try and loosen up my quad a bit, you know, all of those things. But also doing that knowing this is going to help me feel good, but I would be fine if those things are still tight on the day. Yeah. Like it's not the end of the world.
Not the be-all and end-all. I think one other thing that I would say to make sure that you do is embrace the feelings of excitement and the nerves, the ups and the downs that come in race week.
Yeah.
Feel the feels. Embrace the feelings. Ride the waves.
Do go to the expo, I reckon. I love going to the expo, you know, like sort of soaking up. As you know, like sometimes with travel, it's not always possible to do all of those things depending on how long you're going to be there and where you're coming from. But I think as much as possible, if you can really just like soak up the atmosphere and have as much of the experience as you possibly can, you know, like probably one of my favorite things is hanging out at the finish line, and you know, and that's sort of why this year we looked at not coming home until Monday, just so could really enjoy the race weekend and soak it all up, and also like go have someone else cook us dinner and not have to come home and cook for kids. It's like that'd be good. So I would definitely definitely do that. And what else would I say as things to do? For me personally, I know like for people who are new to the distance, this might seem really counterintuitive, but for me, warming up is definitely a do. And that if you are doing your event as walk run, like it doesn't have to be like a run warm up. It can be like a walk warm up with maybe a few little jogs in there. But I think it makes a big difference to calming down your central nervous system. I think it makes a big difference to it not being a shock to the system when you do start running. With all of the adrenaline that's happening. And so for me, as a running warm-up, I would tend to run for at a very easy pace for about 20 minutes. And then I'd probably do about like 4 20-second strides at about like the pace that I'm going to be running. So a bit different to normal strides where you'd be going faster than that. just to kind of go, yep, this is what it feels like, we're good. It kind of, I think it sort of like calms you down. For me, it refocuses me on running. For me is about so much more than the outcome of this thing. So just having that warm up just allows everything to sort of calm down. And so if you're doing a walk warm up, then I would just say, you'd probably be walking for that 20 minutes and then do like a few 20-second jogs towards the end. And then it was also that much easier to, then you're not starting cold, because then I find it quite easy. I'll probably warm up in my long sleeve, then chuck that in the drop bag, and then I can walk around in my singlet, particularly on the Gold Coast, and not feel the cold and not be there sort of shivering and like everything like that. So for me, yes, you have to get up a little bit earlier for that, but also for people who, like, how sometimes like when they start to run and it's only when they're about 20 minutes in that they go, oh crap, I actually need to go to the toilet. You do the warm up, you get that out of the way, and then you can organise all that toilet break stuff before the race actually starts.
And you look totally hardcore when you're warming up before an event.
Yeah, I mean, people do look at you like you are mad, and I appreciate that, because I used to look at people like that. I'm like, plenty of time to run, people. You don't need to do this.
Yeah.
But it makes a difference. And the times that I've had to skip a warm up because of just running out of time have not gone well. And part of that, I'm sure it's because what I'm used to too. But yeah, I think it does make a big difference. And I think the other part of Rachel's question, I'm just going to check, but there was a thing about how do you make sure that you keep your long runs easy and aren't tempted to sort of like do it for time.
To the whole it's a training run, not a race. I like to I like to have a pace guide that's coming in, that a pace guide coming into a long run, so I know what my easy pace is. So I make sure that I slow down enough so that the first few kilometres of my run, obviously when you're feeling a little bit more chipper, you look at your it doesn't, there's so much variation, isn't there, when you're talking about a long run. You can have a long run that's 10 k's long, or you can have a long run that's 30 k's long. So, if you're going for something that's around the middle of the road, say sort of, 17, 18 kilometres, then obviously you plan a route. Very few of us get to just go for an 18k run without doing some kind of planning about where we're going to run. For me, I identify the bits that I know that might be a little bit more challenging for me. I know that if I go out too fast, that the back half of it is going to feel a lot worse than it has to. I try to make sure that right from the beginning that I'm in that easy pace. So if my easy pace is between 6.5 minute kilometres and 7.5 minute kilometres, like it could be anything, depending on the day, depending on the weather. It's going to be slower when it's hotter. It's going to be faster when it's colder. It depends on where I'm at in my cycle patch. What the week's been like. But I try to make sure that right from the beginning that my pace is in my easy zone. Around 7 minute kilometres, and I will structure walk breaks in early so that I'm not running the first 10 kilometres and then run walking the second 10 kilometres. I would much prefer for myself to have a consistent run that contains consistent walk breaks, rather than have something that's back end heavy on the walk breaks where there's more walking than running because I'm exhausted. So I like to, like the long, easy run takes a bit of discipline, I think. It's so easy just to go, oh, I feel fantastic. I'm just going to keep running at this pace. It's wonderful. What a glorious day. La da 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 da. And then you go, oh, shit. Oh, this is terrible. I can't run anymore. I've got to walk, I wish I've run out of water, or, God, I wish I was somewhere else, but here. It takes a fair bit of discipline to try and stick at the easy pace, because it's not always your natural running pace.
Yeah.
It's a little bit slower than what your natural sort of steady pace, where you just go out and don't think too much about slowing down or speeding up. It's just that everyone's got that kind of natural pace that they gravitate to, and I think easy is just a touch slower than that. And it doesn't have to be an uncomfortable pace, but it's certainly.
I mean, it's amazing how slow can still be comfortable. Really, I think one of the things that I think about the long, easy run is, or like in my case, probably my week tends to be structured a little bit differently in that, like my super easy runs are more like 1 hour runs, and then my long run will be more like, it's still in the aerobic zone, but like more at the top end, so a bit more of a steady pace. Yeah. But generally speaking, I find that my workout days are hard enough that I'm so excited to run slow. Yeah. And so for me, like, probably I would normally think about, like, really, like, my easy pace could be anywhere from 5:30 to 7:30, even like up to 8, just depending on what I've done. So like for pure easy pace, I like to think of it as I shouldn't feel like I'm running.
Yeah.
Like there shouldn't really be any effort. And sometimes that is 8-minute pace. And sometimes, like, if I'm super fresh, it might be quicker than that. But I think it's probably the sort of like the turning point for me with those long runs was just going, okay, these sessions are not a test of fitness. No. Because I can always run a little bit faster to make myself feel better about it, but it doesn't actually mean anything. And
doesn't achieve anything either.
No. And so I think that generally speaking, you should be doing enough hard work in your workouts that when you get to like a recovery week where it's all easy, or you get to an easy run or a long run, you should be so psyched for some super sexy pace happening that it should just take care of it, care of itself. But I think it also does take some discipline. So you can, other ways to kind of like get around it can be to change your data screens on your watch so you can't see what the pace is.
Yep. So you're just watching time.
Yeah. Like if you have like a heart rate monitor, it can be kind of like easier to sort of just switch over that and look at that and go, yep, cool, I'm in the zone. And one of the interesting things that I've noticed, because I've switched off auto lap on my watch, and mostly I do that for workouts so that when I do like have like a 2 kilometer interval, it doesn't split it up into 1 and 1. It just says 2 kilometers and what the thing is. And so it doesn't like tell me what my pace is every kilometer. And what I've noticed since I've probably done that for the better part of like a couple of years really, is that almost all of my runs, if the terrain doesn't change that much, will pretty much be negatively split, because I'll start off super slow when I'm warming up, and then like it will probably get quicker towards the end, and it just sort of naturally you can kind of like go to effort, I think, a little bit easier when you aren't getting that external feedback, and because everyone will look at it and go, oh, like that was too fast, that was too slow, like, and it just, I think that sort of like taking that aspect
Yeah.
out of it can help as well. And I think just knowing what the purpose is of those runs helps, because you can just know that that you're not going to get the full benefit of it if you're putting in more effort than what you should be. Because for the most part, if you're looking at long, easy runs, they should be, I think, the most fun run of your week.
Yeah.
And it, like if you're kind of like looking at it and it's feeling like a lot like hard work, then like slow down or introduce some walk breaks if you can't get comfortable at a slower pace, which a lot of people find in the beginning.
Don't wait till and structure in your walk breaks as well. Like just set your intervals on your phone, on your watch, for your walk breaks. And if that's if you physically can't slow your pace down, but you find that if your easy run is too taxing and you haven't been able to slow your pace down, regular walk breaks.
Yeah, I listen to podcasts. That helps me to like keep it at an easy pace, as opposed to music. With music, I'll naturally kind of like speed up to the beat of the music. And Josh always says that my playlist sounds like I'm in Ibiza. Just because like I sort of go for those sort of like more up-tempo songs for like harder runs. So I will tend to, like if I'm warming up, I'll listen to a podcast for a bit, and then if I go into the workout section, I'll have music. Or if it's an easy run, then I will just listen to a podcast. And I think it just helps to keep me in that easy zone. And I've noticed a few times where I've attempted moderate runs while listening to a podcast, it's not gone well. So the
other thing you can do is go with a friend. You can go run with somebody who's
not a fast friend.
Than you. Yeah, go with somebody who runs slower than you, and it's good for you and it's good for them.
Yeah.
As well. So it's or go with your kids if they're something that's, take the dog, or something that's going to make you stop and start a lot. If you go somewhere, you can go somewhere that's super scenic, and then you'll just like naturally stop for photos all the time. It'll take care of itself. Absolutely, yeah.
And the other two bits of her question were tips for recovery and post-event blues. So my big recovery tip is, as much as like people finish events and usually really struggle to eat. It's really common because your body's just gone through this, something like that is to some extent a bit of an assault on your system, and you get better at it. But at that point, it's just about getting some carbs in there. So I would usually tend to do not be afraid of the Coca-Cola in this situation. It is, like whether you're having that or maybe some, like some people find ginger beer really settles their stomach, something like that. You're going to be getting some sugar into the system. It's not food. Just kind of help to sort of settle everything down. And
decompresses everything as well, and it just settles. It does an amazing settling your tummy
as soon as you can. Like, and if I would say if people are still having trouble for the next day or so, particularly after a first event, it's not unusual, but I just tend to recommend people like get some soda water, get some juice, and just like sip on that through the day so you're getting something. And but the reality is the more actual food that you can get in, the better. Like the more quickly you're going to recover. And you do get better at it. So like I think after Canberra I had 2 to 3 coffees. Who counts? Not me.
Doesn't matter.
And then we went out to brunch, and I had like some had like fries and a big pumpkin salad,
Yum.
which is delicious. And I felt like I recovered really, really well with that because, you know, if you can't get in real food, that's fine. Like getting any carbohydrate in is going to be good. But if you can take in some nutrient-dense carbohydrate, even better. And so I found after that I wasn't overly tired, I wasn't overly sore, but also some of that is just training over time.
Yeah.
You know, so like because I do generally sort of run around 100 kilometres a week, even though a race is a really intense thing, I'm running less that week. Body's just more conditioned to it. So in the past, there'd be definitely would have been like a lot more recovery associated with that. And even so, I think even more than the physical recovery, there's the mental recovery too, you know, which is really important. So I would tend to generally have as a minimum 3 to 4 days off after a big race. You know, like if it's sort of like an event that's kind of in the middle of your training plan, you don't need that amount of time. But for a first event or something that was a really hard effort, I wouldn't even, and if say it's on Sunday, I would tend not to even think about running until Thursday.
Yeah. I think, people rush back. Lots of people rush back too soon, I think. There's they're feeling like I have to run. It's nice to maybe go for a walk to shake things out, get the muscles moving and get the joints moving again. But it doesn't really, I don't think getting out in those first few days afterwards, I don't think that necessarily achieves a whole lot.
No, I mean, I think that,
for trying to make sure you get out for a 5K the next day, it's, if you feel like running a 5K the next day, that's fine, but it doesn't. And
you also mentally, you might feel like it, and then physically you get out there and you're like, this was a bad idea. And it also depends on if you're traveling too. So I had originally been, after Canberra, I'd originally been scheduled to have an easy run the day after. And if I hadn't been traveling, I think I would have actually felt quite good with that. And then I was, I think, having 2 to 3 days completely off after that. But because I was traveling and I had like a big plane and then like driving in the car for, an hour and a half to get home, there's no way I was running that easy run the next day. I was like, that's not happening.
It's so, not after travel, you travelled down on, was it Friday and then back on Sunday?
Yeah.
And in 3 days you've got 8 or 9 hours worth of travel. So plus you've run a half marathon, and drunk countless numbers of coffee. Your body has to recover at some point, and so does your brain. Your mind has to mentally you have to allow for some recovery as well.
And so I think I wouldn't be like, I think sort of like things like stretching are good in that week, like a bit of yoga, a bit of light movement. I wouldn't be going and getting like a massage in that first week. I'd sort of hold off just to allow everything to sort of settle a little bit more. I think that, like having some extra magnesium, salt bath, all great things. Do not, and all through that week, I would be just like, whatever you feel like eating, go for it, because you probably need it. And with the post-event blues, I just always have the next thing booked in.
Oh, same.
Always have the next thing.
Why?
Next thing.
Yep.
So like for... I'm going up to the Gold Coast, and then I've got Jetty to Jetty a couple of weeks later, which will just be a fun social run, which I will tell my running coach in no uncertain terms that I'm not running anything pacey on that one. And then I think after that, they've changed the date this year of our local half. So it's in August, not in September, because I think that they're just hoping... something like a little less oppressive. It's usually pretty pleasant here in September, but you can get some hot days, and they prefer to start it a bit later than maybe the runners would prefer to start it. But they've got to deal with volunteers and, so. Yeah. They're doing that in August. So that's booked in, and then have registered for Melbourne. So that's booked in because I went in on their early bird thing because I've been burnt a few times this year by not doing early bird. And for me, generally speaking, like that sort of October period would be like the last thing for the year. So I tend to have all of those things booked in advance. But even if you don't, because also like it can be a big expense with events, like they're not cheap. And particularly if you're looking at traveling, I think just knowing like what the focus of your next cycle is going to be can help, even if there's not an event attached to it.
That forward planning in your knowing where you're running, where you want your running to go, just in what direction you want to head, if there's a goal next year that you're aiming for. So have you got a longer term plan that say after the Gold Coast, that next year at the Gold Coast you want to run a faster time, a longer distance, shorter distance at a faster time, whatever, so that you've got that once you've had your recovery, that you've got a direction that you want to face. You don't necessarily have to have an event. I love having events booked in. I've got events booked in for February and March already next year, January and March next year already. But you don't have to have that. And for people who don't like doing lots of events, because I know there's people out there like that, and as well as the fact that it is financially, it can be limiting given how expensive they are to enter. But to have a vague idea, to have an idea of where you want to take your running in the next 12 months is helpful, I think.
And you can always change that too. Like you might do the event thinking, like this 10K or this half marathon or this marathon is the distance I want to focus on. And then you might do the event and you're like, actually
I don't.
This was not like I went through and I did the training cycle and the race, and I didn't enjoy it as much as when I was training for 10K or whatever it is. And then you can always change that plan based on, generally speaking, I would also just allow that recovery time to sort of allow any feelings you might have sort of settle a little bit, because a lot of times if you have a particularly challenging race, you might have a reaction to that is that it's about that particular thing, not sort of like about that distance or that training. Sometimes you have an event that does not reflect the training, and that's really hard when you've worked really hard through that training to come to terms with the fact that sometimes you don't get what you worked for, but sometimes you don't. And that's just, and there's always things that you can learn from that. Like I think when that happened to me one year and I was like, okay, I didn't sort of like give myself the time I needed to warm up. I didn't give myself the time I needed for all of the nutrition stuff that needed to happen in the lead up. And I was kind of just not as focused as what I'd normally be. But you can also look at that and go, yes, but those things aren't 100% responsible for what happened. It's just sometimes you just have a really crappy day. So I think you want to use that recovery time to look at what would I work on, but also what would I not internalize about that, because sometimes it's hard to come to, but sometimes there's no reason why you have a bad run, you just do.
Exactly. And sometimes you've done everything right. You've done the things, you've ticked all the boxes, and on the day things just don't come together for whatever reason. And it happens. It happens. It doesn't matter what distances you run. It could be your 5K, it could be your 50K, it could be 100K. It doesn't matter. It just sometimes happens. But it's I've always liked to sort of look at it as layering your goals as well. To if you've got lots of aspects to your running goals, lots of layers, then you're not falling into that you're not in that position where you've put all your eggs in one basket and you've put all your heart and soul into that one training cycle and that one event, and then when it's over, that feeling of emptiness, you've got to have some to have some layers to your goals. So you've got you've got maybe segments in your local runs that you like to, that you want to beat eventually, or you want to improve on, or you've got your 1K times or your 1 mile times, things like that, things that aren't actually connected to the event that you're training for can be goals as well, that give you something else to focus on other than this one event that you're training for.
And even having, I find a couple of my favourite routes around here are sort of like hill loops.
Yep.
And and they've never been like a hard goal. I've never kind of thought, I want to get much better at that.
Yep.
But I have the benefit of every time I run that, I'm like, gee, I like that run. And I remember when I moved here, I thought I was going to die. It's just and so you sort of have that little, I much prefer that as a kind of, as a feeling of improving fitness necessarily than a number, because I was really struggling with some of my moderate paced runs, down in Ballina, which is super flat. And one day I had the opportunity to I thought, I'm just going to run during the day and I'll run here and I'll do the hill loop. And not only did it felt fantastic, it felt easy the whole way, and it's exactly the same, actually faster than the pace that I've been struggling to make on the flat. So, sort of, I always have those where, that's also where sometimes those Strava segments can come in handy.
Yeah.
If they're not on your local route, you can create one so that it will just sort of compare your efforts over time. It's always nice when you can see trending faster.
Well, yesterday's run for me, I was like, well, I want to set up a loop that was approximately 10 kilometres. I managed pretty close. It was just over 9K. And I hadn't run it in a while. I knew it had some ups and downs. I knew it had some segments in it. I knew, when I checked my stats on Strava afterwards, I was really surprised to find that I had come equal second on one of my segment PBs for one section, and I got a new PB on another section. And I was thinking, as I was running them, I have no idea, I'm not going to say, right, this is the beginning of the segment and I have to run it next. I don't do that. Some people do, I know.
No, but that's the best. That's my favourite bit, is when you save it at the end and then you get to wait and see what happens on Strava. It's is there going to be a surprise today? There could be.
I got victory. I've got presents in my basket. Yeah, and so while I was running it, I was more thinking about, how does my body feel? How does this effort feel? How's my form running down this hill? I'm trying to concentrate on and playing around with speeding up and slowing down and changing my posture and, getting my the last thing that I was thinking about was how fast I was making my way from the top of the hill to the bottom of the hill. But while I was thinking about those sorts of things, little did I know, but this is it's a new Strava segment PB in the making. So, and to then be able to look back at those and go, oh, wow, well, maybe next time I'll try. And I can take more than 5 seconds off, or I could maybe beat that PB that I came within 12 seconds of getting or whatever. But to see those gradual improvements where you're not specifically training for those segments, they just happen to be part of your training.
Yeah.
And to have those little surprises pop up on your run on Strava, it's really lovely. And so they're kind of it's another layer to the complexity of it, in that, you know, it's a little bit like at CrossFit, I guess, with rope climbs and things like that. It's not something you have to practice all the time. Yes, you have to practice them, but you don't have to practice them all the time to be getting better at them. All the other movements that you're doing, so all the other training that you're doing, your hill repeats, your sprint sessions, your threshold, your long runs, your events and things like that, they're all coming together to make these other improvements along the way. And tying them together like a net is how, you know, and to make these layers of goals is, I think, part of stopping yourself getting, you know, sort of sucked into that post-event slump that you can.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the other part of it is having people to share it with, because, you know, a lot of times
people who understand
certain family members
who remain
who, you know, like, I don't know how many half marathons I've done now, but certain people who go like, how far is it again? Is that 10 Ks?
Okay, half marathon.
You know, was that a, you know, that went okay? You know, and so sort of like people who have like within the community who have sort of like seen all of your training, understand like what that work actually entails, and, you know, how much you would have had to work during the race and all of that sort of stuff, I think helps, because I think that if you're on your own and you are around other people who sort of like aren't in our weird running subculture, then it's really hard for them to sort of like in some ways it's easy for them to support you through the process by, you know, like being with the kids while you run, or, you know, like making you dinner when you're like, I'm too tired to exist, all that sort of stuff. But afterwards it can be harder for them to support you, because deep down they don't understand why you do it. You know, so it's sort of like, I've certainly had conversations with people outside of running who do not understand why I would do something that is hard or uncomfortable in a run. And there's no real way to explain that if you don't have a concept of that.
Absolutely.
And so I get a lot in terms of like not getting, like, I think I always have like a little bit of melancholy after an event.
Look, it's natural, because, you know, you get that runner's high, and it is only natural that, you know, what goes up comes down. You know, you've got to ride the low. There is going to be a low, where, you know, how long it takes to get there and how long you spend there. Like, I think it's how long you spend there that makes the difference between celebrating your run, enjoying the community feel, the atmosphere of, you know, runners coming together, and then that carries you through a few days, perhaps. And then by the end of the week, you're like, oh, it's like it never happened, really. You know, nobody. And
also, I think that oftentimes
about it or something. But then, you know, if you go, there's then, it ebbs and flows. You're going to have ups, you're going to have downs, absolutely. But I think it's about not being stuck in that place afterwards.
Yeah, because I think also, you know, like it's also something that oftentimes, like, you can have a great result in an event, but in some ways it shows you, like, when you're training for it, it's kind of, even if you've done that particular distance before, you forget. It's kind of theoretical. You're like, I'll do this workout, do this long run, you know, and you're kind of like working your way through, and then you do the event and you're like, holy crap, that was hard.
When did that become so?
It's really hard. It felt really hard. And then it kind of, then it can kind of like shine a light on, like, if you want to get better at that, imagine how good you're going to have to be at doing hard things, and it can be kind of intimidating. You're like,
can be a little bit of both,
but then eventually you forget, and it's like childbirth, and it's fine.
And I think a lot of the time, I don't have many days where I make myself go for a run, but there's certainly days where I feel less inclined to run than other days. I don't bounce out of bed wanting to run every single day. Most days, yes, but not every day. So, and I think maybe one of the things that might help is the fact that you do it because it's part of your routine, not necessarily because you've got a burning desire to do it.
Yeah.
So when you comes back to getting back into running after you've had your recovery, because there's so many, there's a lot of people who have they stick to their training plan like glue, they're through their training cycle, they have their run, and then they don't run for 2 months.
Yeah.
So reminding yourself, getting out there, and maybe you're only forcing it for the first 5 minutes, but I think there's certainly there's absolutely a place for wait until you're gagging for it kind of thing. Wait till you're excited about the thought of going for a run. But then there's also a certain aspect, and I think there's a place for go outside and remember what it is about running that you like.
Yeah.
What is it? Why is it that you do it? It's not actually, maybe it's not actually about the running. Maybe it's about the getting outside. Maybe it's about the getting the fresh air and moving your body. To go outside and go for a walk. It doesn't have to be a run, but to go outside and go for a walk. But the longer you don't do it, the harder it is to get back out there and get back into the rhythm of running and and a training cycle or something. It's sort of a sometimes you need to nudge yourself.
And it can be a bit of a missed opportunity. Like if you think of the kind of fitness adaptation that you get from really hard workouts, a race or an event is that like times 10. So yes, you need to fully recover to get the benefit of that adaptation. But if you don't get back out there, then you'll lose it. And it's a huge waste of an opportunity to like build on that and compound on that and sort of like moving forward into the next thing. Like the amount of times like I've had like a full rest after a race, and then like I think I was going out to do like a 16k run, and like I ran it like 450 pace, just like not paying attention to it. I'm like, Jesus, that's pretty quick. And so if you sort of allow the recovery to kind of like morph into detraining, then you miss out on that.
I think, and it does. I think it. You might realise that potential of that hard effort race. You might realise that potential 4 weeks later.
Yeah.
It might be 6 weeks later, 8 weeks later. Like it's just because it doesn't happen immediately.
No.
Doesn't mean it's not happening.
And oftentimes it will happen in different places. Like it would be like I've probably like in sort of like in races, like I've obviously improved a lot over the last few years, but my easy pace has not changed that much. It pretty much stays like where it is. And so I think that there's probably probably have a lot more of a range of paces now, but easy runs is almost like the last place where my fitness sort of shows up, and I don't really look for it there.
But it's not what you're looking for
for that reason. So like it's not necessarily always gonna like show up like where you expect it to show up, but or like on your schedule. But it will, and you just want to make sure that you make the most of it, because it's it's a big chunk of time, 3 months or 4 or whatever it is.
And if you just sort of think it's easier, for my mind anyway. It's a little bit, I don't know. You sort of you roll off the crest of the wave, and then you just catch. Your have that recovery period and then flow on into the next one. And I find it's that's the easiest way for me. I think last year was the first time I've experienced a post event slump, I guess, and that was after UTA, and I'd done the 250s in 12 weeks, and I didn't have anything booked for the second half of the year. For the first time in forever, I didn't have anything booked. I knew I wasn't going to be able to make Melbourne. I couldn't really make any running plans because I was going away to Europe. So that was my running plan, was to go and run in for 3 weeks. So, but I knew with, jet lag and things like that it would be difficult. And then I sort of just signed up for something just because I wanted something. And it was probably, was not the best event to sort of sign up for, but it still gave me a reason to have structure to my training, and it still gave me a reason to get out there and do my long runs and all that sort of stuff. It gives it purpose more than anything. But it was sort of hard, and I looking around at various events and things, and it wasn't until I accidentally realised that I'd accidentally qualified for 2 bays when that opened up, and all of a sudden, and I remembered I'd been having my eye on that for a few years and wanting to qualify for it, and popped back into my radar, and bang, I'd already qualified and job done, sort of thing. It was, it was that, and it was, having that reignited my, my I don't know, not my passion, that never really went, but just, perked my interest in something, I guess.
Yeah.
And, gave me something to aim for. But yeah, it was a little bit disconcerting, not sort of, feeling like I didn't know which way to turn. I didn't have something to focus my eye on. Still running, but yeah, not having something to sort of point myself towards. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can also...
I seemed so far away at that point in time. It was just still... it wasn't real.
Yeah. I mean, I think also sort of like if you are at the point where you maybe have finished a big, endurance cycle and you want something new, but mentally you're not quite ready to do that again, you can just, you can do sort of like a cycle just focusing on short distance. Yeah. And because it's different, it's going to be more interesting. And then, with a view to being, at park run once a week or whatever it is, it's sort of, there's so many different things that you can train for that would feel very different from like anything that you've done before. Like even if you are keeping the distance, you might be like, I'm going to, do aim for a certain amount of elevation or whatever it is that you're doing. Like I'll get to summer and I'll probably be not super keen on, like, some of the runs that I'm doing at the moment look really pleasant because the weather's nice and cool, but
it's beautiful. It's easy to run 20k when it's
but you add like 30 degrees and 90% humidity and you're just like, no, that doesn't seem like. So traditionally I've always sort of switched to more strength training and like shorter distance over summer, and just sort of like have which has always worked well because of like the CrossFit Open being in like February, but now they're having it in October. So
really?
Yeah. So yeah, but like, there are so many different different things that you can kind of like work into your plan just to keep it exciting and new, because it can be hard in that period after a race where you're like, okay, well, I've done it now, like why am I still running this 15 kilometre long run on the weekend, you know. And particularly if it was sort of like a push for you to manage the distance and you've had to sort of sacrifice family time and whatever else, then it can be nice to, you know, sort of like just have a change in tack and just do something different until you start to feel the pull of whatever's next.
Yeah, absolutely. We did promise that we'd try and...
Yeah, well, we're at an hour and a half, so it's like a huge improvement.
It's huge. I think we should give ourselves a pat on the back.
That is it for this week. I'm about to pack everything up to go up to the Gold Coast. So if you listen to this before the weekend and you're going to be up there, let me know so I can say hi. And what exactly I'll be doing in terms of running, I'm not exactly sure at the minute. I'm just waiting to see how this cold pans out. But yeah, I will be back next week. And as always, you can jump in to the community group and ask any questions at any time. And if you would like to join Learn to Run Early, because the next one is starting in September, so we've got a couple of months before that starts, but I have an intro program running at the moment for anyone who joins early, which starts with walking and basic strength, and so it can be a great way to establish those habits. So by the time Learn to Run actually starts, then you're in great shape to get going. So I will link up those things, and I will speak to you next week.